New York City gleamed in the afternoon sun, its glass skyscrapers reflecting the light like colossal diamonds. Helena Kowalski, a woman in her early 30s with delicate features and a wild mane of dark hair, pulled back into a practical bun, pushed a cleaning cart toward the elevator. It was 7:30 in the evening, the hour when the offices of Novatech usually emptied, leaving the 55th floor of the upscale downtown skyscraper to the mercy of the cleaning crew. She had spent 3 years dusting crystal awards on shelves, vacuuming plush carpets, and polishing glass desks where people earned more in a month than she did in an entire year. She held no resentment toward them. Quite the opposite, she was grateful for the work. As an immigrant from a small town in upstate New York, who had come to the city with a head full of dreams and a wallet as empty as a church on a Monday, she valued the stability this employment provided. The elevator stopped with a soft chime. The doors glided open silently, revealing a spacious corridor with marble flooring that reflected the light like a mirror. Helena sighed, pushing the cart forward. Her old shoes squeaked on the polished surface, creating an unwelcome counterpoint to the elegant surroundings. "Good evening, Helena," a voice called from the reception desk. "Good evening, Mark," she replied with a smile, pausing for a moment. "Still working late?" Mark, a security guard in his early 60s with a graying mustache and a kindly gaze, shrugged. "Waiting for my relief, running late again, but it's fine. I'm used to it." "Is everyone gone?" Helena asked, looking around the empty lobby. "I believe so. The boss left an hour ago for some important meeting, and the rest followed right after. Do you have a lot to do tonight?" Helena glanced at her watch. "As always, but I like it when it's empty. I can work at my own pace." Mark smiled, as if he knew more than he let on. "Well then, I'll leave you to it. Have a good evening, Helena." "Thank you, Mark." Helena rolled her cart toward the main stretch of offices. She started with the CEO's office, the largest room on the floor, boasting a panoramic view of downtown Manhattan. Adam Nowak's office, belonging to the 40-year-old founder and owner of Novatech, was a space Helena cleaned with particular care. Not because she feared the boss, in fact she rarely saw him, and when she did they exchanged only polite nods, but because in that room stood a grand piano. Yes, a grand piano. A beautiful, black, gleaming Steinway stood by the window. Helena had never asked why the CEO kept a piano in his office. Rumors circulated that he had once been a concert pianist before founding his tech company, but no one had confirmed it. To Helena, it didn't much matter. What mattered was that the instrument was there, majestic and tempting. She closed the office door behind her and stood still for a moment, savoring the silence. The air carried a faint scent of expensive cologne, a blend of sandalwood and bergamot that she always associated with the CEO. She approached the desk, beginning to wipe its glass surface, collecting specks of dust invisible to the naked eye. She worked methodically, moving through the room like a well-programmed robot until she finally reached the piano. She hesitated. She always hesitated, standing before the instrument. Yet as she did every evening, she eventually opened the lid and gently wiped the keys with a soft cloth. She did it with reverence, as if touching something sacred. In a way, it was, for Helena, music had always held a sacred dimension. When she finished, she straightened up and looked around. The office gleamed with cleanliness, and the view of the city, slowly lighting up for the evening, was breathtaking. The lights of New York City twinkled like stars, creating the illusion that sky and earth had swapped places. Helena felt the familiar pang in her heart, a mix of awe and longing. "Flectersi nekeos superos, acheronta movebo," she whispered, quoting Virgil. "If I cannot move heaven, I will raise hell." These words, taught to her by her grandmother, were her personal motto. They reminded her that even if fate wasn't always kind, there was always another path to fulfilling one's dreams. Helena glanced at the piano once more, then approached the door and listened. Silence. Perfect. She returned to the instrument, sat on the stool, and rested her fingers on the keys, not yet pressing them. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. And then, as she did every evening, when she believed no one could hear her, she began to sing. O fortuna, velut luna, statu variabilis. Her voice, clear and powerful, filled the office space. It was an aria from Karl Orff's Carmina Burana, a technically demanding piece, but perfectly suited to her mezzo-soprano voice. Helena sang without accompaniment, not daring to touch the piano keys, yet her voice was so rich it seemed to contain an entire orchestra. Every note was delivered with perfect precision, every word of the Latin text pronounced with ideal diction. In those moments, she was no longer a cleaner from Poland working for minimum wage. She was an artist, a vocalist, whom she had always dreamed of becoming. She was the granddaughter of Helena Kowalski, once an acclaimed opera singer whose career had been cut short by a throat illness. Her grandmother had taught Helena everything: vocal technique, interpretation, the Latin needed for ancient arias. But she had also taught her realism. Talent isn't enough, she used to say. You need money, connections, luck. And we, my dear, always lacked those. Helena never had the means for a professional music education. After her grandmother's death, which orphaned her at the age of 17, she had to quickly grow up and find a way to support herself. Music became her secret garden, a private sanctuary she escaped to when no one was watching. Semper crescis, aut decrescis, vita detestabilis. Now, in the Novatech CEO's office, Helena unleashed her passion. Her voice rose and fell, filling every corner of the room, bouncing off the windows and returning to her amplified and purified. She sang with her eyes closed, completely lost in the music, unaware that she was no longer alone. Adam Nowak paused in the doorway of his own office, hand on the knob and eyes wide. He had returned for some documents he'd left on his desk, expecting to find an empty room. Instead, he found, well, he wasn't quite sure what he'd found. The woman sitting at his grand piano wasn't playing it. He noticed that immediately, but she was singing, and how she was singing. Her voice, powerful yet crystal clear, sent a shiver down his spine. Adam knew enough about music to recognize he was listening to someone exceptional. He stood motionless, afraid to move, lest he scare away this extraordinary, ethereal being. In the dim light of the office, illuminated only by the city lights beyond the window, the woman seemed almost otherworldly. Suddenly, from somewhere in the corridor, came a noise, likely a cleaning cart hitting something metallic. The sound yanked Helena from her musical trance. She opened her eyes, and when she saw the silhouette standing in the doorway, her face paled. "Oh, my God!" she gasped in Polish, scrambling to her feet. I didn't... Adam took a step forward, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "Please don't be afraid," he said softly, also in Polish. "You haven't done anything wrong." Helena stood rooted to the spot, hands pressed to her chest, as if to keep her frantic heart from leaping free. She recognized him instantly. Adam Nowak, the CEO and owner, a man whose face graced the covers of business magazines, and whose office she had just illegally used as her private concert hall. I'm so sorry, Mr. Nowak," she stammered, feeling a flush of shame spread across her face. "It won't happen again. Please don't fire me." Adam moved closer, still holding his hands in a placating gesture, as if approaching a frightened animal. "Fire you?" he repeated disbelievingly. "Why would I fire you for something so extraordinary?" Helena blinked, disoriented. She had expected shouts, a reprimand, immediate dismissal, but not admiration. Adam smiled, seeing her confusion. "What's your name?" he asked. "Helena." "Helena Kowalski," she replied automatically, still dazed. "Helena," he repeated as if savoring her name. "Do you know that you have an absolutely extraordinary voice?" Helena lowered her gaze, unsure how to react to a compliment from a man who was her boss, but whom she barely knew. Thank you, she mumbled. My grandmother was a singer. She taught me a little. A little? Adam raised an eyebrow. Your talent goes far beyond a little. Where did you study? Helena felt a pang of shame. Whenever the conversation turned to her musical education, she felt like an imposter. Nowhere, she admitted softly. We couldn't afford it. Adam nodded as if understanding something. He walked to his desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms over his chest. In his tailored suit, with perfectly trimmed stubble and penetrating blue eyes, he looked like someone accustomed to controlling every situation. But now there was something different in his gaze, something Helena couldn't decipher. And you've been working here for 3 years, on the cleaning crew. Adam nodded again, as if piecing together a puzzle in his mind. And, do you often sing like that? In my office? He asked. But there was no accusation in his voice, only genuine interest. Helena felt her cheeks burn even hotter. Sometimes, she admitted, then quickly added, but only when everyone else has left. I never bother anyone. You don't bother me either, Adam assured her with a smile. Actually, he hesitated for a moment, as if debating whether he should say what was on his mind. Actually, I was wondering if you'd be willing to sing again. Helena looked at him, incredulous. Now? Yes, now. Unless you have other plans for the evening? It was a rhetorical question. They both knew Helena intended to spend the next several hours cleaning offices. Adam walked to the piano and opened the lid, protecting the keys. Accompaniment won't be an issue, he said, sitting on the stool Helena had occupied moments before. The woman stood paralyzed, unable to believe what was happening. The owner of the company, a millionaire and one of the most influential men in American business, was offering her a private musical duet. It was surreal. Do you know O Fortuna? She asked uncertainly. Adam smiled and without a word began to play the introduction to the aria. His fingers moved across the keys with a certainty that spoke of years of practice. Helena felt her heart quicken, but this time not from fear but from excitement. When her turn came, she took a deep breath and began to sing. This time, her voice sounded different, richer, fuller, strengthened by the accompaniment and the presence of an audience, even if it was an audience of one. She sang with more passion than ever before, allowing the music to flow through her like a river, releasing all the emotions she usually kept in check. Adam played masterfully, adapting to her interpretation, following her voice, and sometimes leading her in unexpected directions. It was like a dance, a conversation, a meeting of two souls speaking the same universal language. When the last note faded, silence settled in the office. Helena stood with her arms at her sides, overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. Adam sat at the piano, his fingers still resting on the keys, gazing at her with a mix of admiration and something that looked almost like longing. That was, he began, but trailed off, as if no single word was good enough to describe what had just happened. Helena lowered her gaze, suddenly embarrassed. She felt as though she had exposed a part of her soul to him, something she hadn't shown anyone in a very long time. I need to get back to work, she said softly, backing toward the door. I apologize for intruding. Helena! Adam stood abruptly, as if to stop her. Please wait. She stopped, looking at him questioningly. Yes, Mr. Nowak. Adam? Please call me Adam. Helena blinked, confused by the sudden change in tone. Moments ago, they had been addressing each other formally, and now he was suggesting they use first names. It was unexpected. I have a proposition, Adam said, stepping closer, but not here, and not now. Perhaps we could meet tomorrow, for coffee. Helena felt her stomach clench. Had the CEO of the company just invited her on a date? No, that was absurd. It had to be something work-related. Maybe he wanted to transfer her to another department, or fire her in more private circumstances. I don't know if that's a good idea, she replied cautiously. Why? Adam seemed genuinely surprised by her hesitation. Helena hesitated, searching for the right words. "You're the CEO, I'm a cleaner. People will talk." Adam smiled faintly, as if amused by her answer. "I'm not inviting you as the CEO. I'm inviting you as a musician who just heard something absolutely extraordinary and would like to talk about it, that's all." Helena still hesitated. Something about the situation felt too good to be true. People like Adam Nowak didn't invite people like her for coffee. It didn't happen in the real world, only in romantic movies. "Look," Adam added, seeing her hesitation. "Come to the Cadenza Cafe on 5th Avenue tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon. If you show up, we'll talk. If not," he shrugged, "I'll understand and never bring it up again, I promise." Helena bit her lip, weighing the proposition. The Cadenza Cafe was a public place, so she wouldn't have to worry about being alone with him in some suspicious location. On the other hand, what would her colleagues on the cleaning crew say if they found out she was meeting the boss? What would the company employees think? "You don't have to decide now," Adam said gently, seeing her internal struggle. "Just think about it." Helena nodded, not trusting her voice. She had a feeling that if she opened her mouth, she might say something she'd regret later. "Now then," Adam glanced at his watch, "I suppose we both have work to do. I need to find those documents I came back for, and I need to finish cleaning the rest of the floor." Helena finished, grateful for the change of subject. Adam nodded, then walked to his desk and began sifting through papers. Helena took the opportunity to discreetly back out of the office. As she closed the door behind her, she heard his voice again. "See you tomorrow, Helena." She didn't reply. She wasn't sure there would be a tomorrow, at least not in the context Adam was thinking of. But as she walked down the corridor, pushing her cleaning cart, she felt something new blossoming in her heart. Something that was a mixture of fear, excitement, and hope. It was just the beginning of their story, though Helena didn't know it yet. A story that would lead her to places she had only dreamed of and show her a side of life she had barely suspected existed. But for now, she had to finish cleaning the floor, then return to her small apartment in Queens, where her cat named Mozart and a cold dinner awaited her. Life went on, but something in it had irrevocably changed. Helena couldn't sleep all night. She tossed and turned, and Mozart, her black cat, watched her reproachfully from the foot of the bed, displeased by the constant movement. The clock's hands relentlessly moved forward, counting the minutes of her sleeplessness, while her thoughts revolved around one topic, Adam Nowak's proposition. "What do you think, Mozart?" she whispered, scratching the cat behind its ears. "Should I meet him?" Mozart purred, which Helena interpreted as, "Do what you want, just let me sleep." She sighed, staring at a crack in the ceiling of her small ground-floor apartment in an old building in Queens. The narrow window looked out onto an air shaft, meaning she often had to turn on the lights even during the day. The rent was low, but it still devoured a significant portion of her paycheck. When her alarm rang at 5 in the morning, Helena felt as if she hadn't slept at all. She dragged herself out of bed, made a simple coffee and a sandwich, then took a quick shower. Her morning ritual usually helped her collect her thoughts, but this time her mind was still scattered by the memory of the previous evening. Adam Nowak at the grand piano, his surprised, then admiring gaze, the proposition for a meeting. "This is crazy," she thought, applying a modest amount of makeup. Absolutely crazy. And yet, when she left her home at 6:30 to catch the first bus, her bag, in addition to her usual packed lunch, also contained a small makeup bag with mascara and lipstick, just in case. The workday dragged on relentlessly. Helena was busy cleaning the lower floors of the skyscraper, where smaller companies rented office space. She tried to focus on her duties, but her thoughts constantly drifted to the 55th floor and its owner. "Maybe he's forgotten," she thought, wiping dust from desks. "Maybe it was just a rich man's whim, and today he no longer remembers our conversation." At 1 in the afternoon, she took her lunch break. She sat on a bench outside the building, pulling a cheese and tomato sandwich from her bag. The spring sun felt pleasant on her face as she ate, watching people hurry in different directions. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, to be heading somewhere. Helena often wondered where their life paths were leading. "Miss Kowalski!" She suddenly heard a voice behind her. She turned sharply, nearly dropping her sandwich. Behind the bench stood Megan Walsh, Adam Nowak's assistant, an elegant woman in her 30s, always dressed as if from a fashion magazine. She evoked a mix of admiration and intimidation in Helena. "Yes?" Helena replied, swallowing a bite of her sandwich with difficulty. "Mr. Nowak would like to see you," Megan said, in a businesslike tone. "Can you come to his office in 15 minutes? Helena felt her heart quicken, so he did remember, and he wanted to see her. But why now in the middle of the day? And why send his assistant instead of calling personally? "Of course," she replied, trying to hide her nervousness. Did something happen?" Megan shrugged. "I have no idea. I'm just delivering the message." When the assistant left, Helena quickly finished her sandwich, then headed to the staff restroom. She looked critically in the mirror. She wore her grey cleaning uniform with the company logo, her hair pulled back into a practical bun, and barely a trace of powder on her face. She didn't look like someone about to meet one of the wealthiest men in America. She took out her small makeup bag and applied a touch of lipstick. Then she unbound her hair, ran her fingers through it, and tied it up again, this time more carefully. It was all she could do in such a short amount of time. Precisely at 1:15 in the afternoon, Helena stood before the door of Adam Nowak's office, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the entire corridor could hear it. She knocked gently. "Come in," a voice called from inside. She entered, trying to look more confident than she felt. Adam sat behind his desk, reviewing some documents. When he saw her, he smiled and stood up. "Helena, thank you for coming." He looked different in daylight, more real, less like a figure from her imagination. He wore a dark blue suit and a white shirt without a tie. His blue eyes seemed brighter in the sunny light streaming through the enormous windows. "Ms. Walsh said you wanted to see me," Helena replied, standing stiffly by the door. "Yes, please, have a seat." He gestured to the chair in front of his desk. Helena sat on the edge, her hands folded in her lap. She felt like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about last night," Adam began, perching on the edge of his desk instead of behind it. The informal gesture surprised her a little. "I couldn't stop thinking about your singing." Helena felt her cheeks burn. She wasn't used to compliments, especially from someone like him. "Thank you," she mumbled. "That's not a compliment. It's a fact," he replied with a smile. "You have an exceptional talent, and I'm wondering—" He hesitated for a moment. "I'm wondering why you're working as a cleaner instead of pursuing a musical career." Helena felt a pang of irritation. The question, though likely innocent, touched a painful subject. "Not everyone has the luxury of choice, Mr. Nowak," she replied more coolly than she intended. "Some of us just have to earn a living." Adam looked surprised by her tone, but nodded in understanding. "Of course, I apologize. I didn't mean to sound condescending." An awkward silence fell. Helena felt she should say something, but didn't know what. Adam also seemed to be searching for the right words. "My invitation for coffee is still open," he finally said. "I'd like to continue our conversation in less formal circumstances." Helena hesitated. Part of her wanted to agree, curious about this mysterious man and his proposition, but another part, the more pragmatic one, warned her of the complications it could bring. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she replied honestly. "You're my boss. It could be inappropriate." Adam smiled faintly. "Technically, I'm not your direct supervisor. You work for a cleaning company, which is our subcontractor." "That's just a technicality," Helena countered. "In practice, if you wished it, I could lose this job tomorrow." Adam grew serious. "Do you truly think I'm someone who would do that? Fire you for refusing to have coffee with me?" Helena lowered her gaze. No, she didn't actually think of him as such a person, but she knew him too little to be sure. "I don't know," she replied honestly. We barely know each other. Adam watched her for a moment in silence, as if weighing her words. You're right, he finally conceded. And I understand your concerns, but can I at least try to persuade you? He stood and walked to the grand piano. He opened the lid and sat on the stool. Do you know Nessun Dorma from Puccini's Turandot? He asked, resting his fingers on the keys. Helena felt her heart quicken. Of course, she knew the aria. It was one of her grandmother's favorites. Yes, she replied softly. Adam began to play, his fingers dancing across the keys with surprising dexterity. The introduction to the aria filled the office, pure and full of emotion. And then, to Helena's astonishment, Adam began to sing. His voice, a deep and rich tenor, surprised her. She hadn't expected the CEO of a tech company to possess such vocal talent. He sang with a passion and precision that betrayed years of training. Nessun dorma, nessun dorma. Tu pure, o principessa, nella tua fredda stanza, guardi le stelle che tremano d'amore e di speranza. Helena listened, captivated. Adam sang directly to her, maintaining eye contact that made her feel both intimidated and moved. At one point, he gestured for her to join him. Helena hesitated, but the music was too tempting. She stood and approached the piano. Adam nodded, encouraging her, and continued the accompaniment, while she joined in, her mezzo-soprano perfectly complementing his tenor. For a few magical minutes, it was just them and the music, filling the office space, soaring over the city beyond the windows. When the last note resonated, they looked at each other in silence, connected by something that transcended words. "And how can I refuse after something like that?" Helena whispered, giving in. Adam smiled, but it was a smile devoid of triumph, rather full of gratitude. "So, I'll see you today at 4 in the afternoon, at the cadenza?" Helena nodded. "Yes, I'll be there." "Wonderful." Adam closed the piano lid. "And now, unfortunately, I have to get back to work. I have a video conference in 10 minutes. Of course." Helena backed toward the door. "I should get back to my duties as well." As she was about to leave, Adam stopped her. "Helena?" She turned. "Yes?" "Thank you," he simply said. It wasn't an empty platitude. There was genuine gratitude in his voice. Helena smiled faintly and left, closing the door behind her. For the rest of the day, she worked as if in a trance, her body performing familiar movements while her mind analyzed every detail of her meeting with Adam. His voice, his gaze, the way music had connected them in something that felt almost intimate. At 3:30 in the afternoon, when her shift ended, Helena headed to the staff locker room. She pulled her bag from the locker, which, in addition to her usual items, also contained a change of clothes today. A simple but elegant blue dress she had bought on sale a year ago and never had an occasion to wear. She changed quickly, unbound her hair, and applied a little more makeup than usual. When she looked in the mirror, she saw a woman she barely recognized, more self-assured, prettier, more hopeful. The Cadenza Cafe was a 10-minute walk from the Novatech skyscraper. It was a charming, atmospheric spot, known for its music-inspired decor. Instruments hung on the walls, tables were shaped like piano keys, and the menu was styled like a musical score. Helena arrived promptly at 4 in the afternoon. She looked around uncertainly, searching for Adam, but didn't see him among the guests. She chose a table in a corner and sat down, trying to ignore the nervousness that grew with each passing minute. What if this was a joke? She suddenly thought. What if he doesn't come at all, and I'm sitting here like a fool, waiting for a miracle? She pulled out her phone and checked the time. 4:05. There was no reason to panic. People run late, especially busy people, like the CEO of a major company. 4:10. Helena started fidgeting with her napkin, folding it into smaller and smaller squares. The waitress approached twice, but Helena only ordered water, saying she was waiting for someone. 4:15. Helena's heart sank. Maybe she'd been right, after all, suspecting it was all just a passing whim of a rich man who had grown bored as quickly as he had appeared. "I'm so sorry I'm late." She suddenly heard a familiar voice. Adam Nowak stood by her table, slightly breathless, as if he had run. He wore the same elegant trousers as before, but instead of a jacket and shirt, he now had on a navy sweater with a subtle pattern. "I got stuck in a meeting that dragged on indefinitely," he explained, sitting opposite her. "And then I had to change because I didn't want to look like a corporate robot." Helena couldn't help but smile. There was something disarming in the way this confident businessman suddenly seemed almost nervous, explaining his tardiness. "It's fine," she assured him. "I just got here." They both knew it wasn't true, but Adam had the tact not to comment. The waitress approached their table, and Adam ordered 2 coffees, an espresso for himself and a cappuccino for Helena, at her suggestion. He also ordered a plate of pastries. "So," he began once the waitress left, "I'm glad you decided to come." "It was hard to say no after that performance," Helena replied with a faint smile. "I didn't know you sang." "And likewise," Adam countered. "Although, unlike you, I actually studied music for 3 years at the Juilliard School before I switched to business." "Why did you quit?" Helena asked, genuinely curious. Adam's talent was undeniable. He could have made a career as a singer. Adam sighed, his face taking on a more reflective expression. "My father believed music wasn't a suitable profession for an ambitious man. He insisted I should do something serious. And you listened to him." Helena couldn't hide her surprise. Adam didn't seem like someone who easily succumbed to pressure. "I was young and foolish," he shrugged, "and business turned out to be more interesting than I thought. But music was always my first love. That's why I keep the grand piano in my office. It's my little reminder of the path I could have taken." The waitress brought their order. For a moment they sat in silence, sipping their coffee. Helena felt strangely at ease considering the circumstances. "And you?" Adam finally asked. "You said your grandmother was a singer?" Helena nodded. "Helena Kowalski. She sang with the Chicago Lyric Opera in the 70s and 80s. Nothing huge, but she had a beautiful voice. Unfortunately, when she was 45, she developed throat cancer. She survived, but never sang professionally again." "And she taught you?" "Yes, ever since I was little. My parents died in a car accident when I was 6 years old, and my grandmother raised me. Music was our shared language." Adam listened carefully without interrupting. There was something in his gaze that encouraged confidences. "I wanted to study singing, like my grandmother," Helena continued. "But when I was 17, she passed away. I was left alone, without money, without support. I had to manage somehow." "And how did you manage?" Adam asked softly. Helena shrugged. "In various ways. I worked as a waitress, a cashier, a sales clerk. I tried to save for college, but something always came up. Rent bills, doctor's visits, and then—" she smiled bitterly. "Then it was too late. You're 19, 20, and you think the world will wait for you. And then you're 25, 30, and you realize some trains have already left the station." Adam watched her intensely, as if trying to read more from her face. "It's never too late," he finally said, "especially for someone with talent like yours." Helena scoffed faintly. "You sound like an inspirational Instagram poster. Reality is more complicated." "I know," Adam conceded. "I apologize. I didn't mean to sound patronizing. It's just, I truly believe your voice deserves to be heard." Silence fell. Helena stirred her coffee with a spoon, unsure how to reply. Part of her wanted to believe his words, but the more realistic part reminded her of all the obstacles in her path. "Actually," Adam began cautiously, "that's why I wanted to meet you. I have a proposition." Helena raised an eyebrow. "A proposition?" "Yes." Adam put down his cup and leaned slightly across the table. "In 2 months, I'm hosting a charity gala for my foundation. We're raising money for scholarships for talented children from underprivileged families. It will be an elegant event at David Geffen Hall at Lincoln Center, with many influential people attending." And Helena didn't understand what he was getting at. "And I would like you to perform as the star of the evening." Helena blinked, certain she'd misheard. Pardon? I want you to sing at my gala, Adam repeated, as if it were the most natural proposition in the world. I'll pay you, of course, and I'll take care of everything. The dress, hairdresser, makeup artist, transportation. Helena stared at him incredulous. You must be joking. Not at all, Adam assured her with a smile. I'm entirely serious. But why? Helena still couldn't grasp his motivation. You could hire a professional singer, someone well known with stage experience. I could, Adam conceded. But then it would just be another gala with another star. And I want it to be different. I want it to be an evening people remember, and I believe your voice can provide that. Helena shook her head, still stunned. That's insane. I haven't performed publicly since high school, and this is supposed to be some big gala with important people. Exactly, Adam confirmed. But you don't have to worry. I'll arrange for you to have singing lessons with the best vocal coach in the country. You'll have 2 months to prepare, and I'll be with you every step of the way. Why? Helena asked again, this time more quietly. Why are you doing all this for someone you barely know? Adam looked her straight in the eyes. Because I believe in talent, and in giving people the chance they deserve. Something in his gaze made Helena believe him. Or perhaps she wanted to believe, because the proposition, though crazy, was like the fulfillment of a dream she had long ago given up on. I'll think about it, she finally said. That's all I ask, Adam smiled with relief. Think about it, and let me know. The rest of their meeting was spent discussing music. Helena was surprised by how much they had in common, the same favorite operas, similar musical tastes, the same approach to interpreting classical pieces. Adam possessed an impressive knowledge and passion that reminded her of her grandmother. With each passing minute, she felt more at ease in his company, forgetting the social and financial differences that separated them. When they left the cafe after 2 hours, dusk was already falling. The spring evening was cool but pleasant. I'll walk you, Adam offered. You don't have to, Helena protested. I live on the other side of town. I'll take the bus, as usual. Oh, then at least I'll order you a cab, Adam insisted. Helena wanted to refuse, but she saw the determination in his eyes and understood he wouldn't back down. All right, she agreed. Thank you. Adam pulled out his phone and ordered a ride through an app. While waiting for the taxi, they stood next to each other in awkward silence. That was, a nice afternoon, Helena finally said. Thank you for the coffee and for the proposition. I really will think about it. I'm glad, Adam replied, and I hope you'll agree. But even if you don't, I'd like us to continue our conversations about music and more. There was something so innocent and sincere in that confession that Helena felt her heart melt. I'd like that too, she admitted softly. A taxi pulled up to the cafe. Adam opened the door for her. See you tomorrow? He asked as she got in. See you tomorrow, she confirmed with a smile. As the taxi drove away, Helena turned to look through the back window. Adam stood on the sidewalk, watching her until the car rounded the corner. On the way home, Helena felt as if she were dreaming. Everything that had happened in the last 24 hours seemed surreal. The chance meeting in the office, the duet, coffee at the cadenza, the proposition to perform at the gala. It was like a fairy tale, hard to believe. And yet, when the taxi stopped in front of her building and Helena paid, ignoring Adam's information that the ride was already covered, reality began to return. Climbing the stairs to her small apartment, she was once again just Helena Kowalski, a cleaner at Novatech who sang opera when no one was listening. Mozart greeted her with a meow, demanding dinner. Helena fed the cat, made herself tea, and sat at her small table by the window. Her apartment suddenly seemed even smaller and more depressing than usual. What am I imagining? She thought, looking at her reflection in the dark window pane. That a rich businessman is really interested in a cleaner? That this is more than a fleeting whim, some charitable project for his ego? And yet, when she closed her eyes, She could still hear Adam's voice singing Nessun Dorma. She could still feel the connection that had formed between them as their voices intertwined in harmony. She pulled out the business card Adam had pressed into her hand at their farewell. An elegant card with the embossed gold Novatech logo, a phone number, and an email address. On the back, handwritten, was his private number. Call me when you've made your decision, or when you just want to talk. A. Helena twirled the card in her fingers, wondering what her grandmother would have said in such a situation. Probably something about seizing an opportunity when fate offered it. But her grandmother had been gone for 13 years, and Helena had to make her own decisions. She placed the card on the table and looked at her cat, who was meticulously grooming himself after dinner. "What do you think, Mozart?" she asked, scratching him behind the ears. The cat purred loudly, which Helena took as a good sign. Maybe it was worth the risk. Maybe, just maybe, her life could change. Her life. With that thought, she went to sleep, and her dreams were a mix of piano sounds, the scent of expensive cologne, and Adam Nowak's warm blue gaze. That night, Helena dreamed of stages, spotlights, and the applause of an audience. She dreamed of success, recognition, of the life she had always longed for. And when she woke the next morning, with a strange lightness in her heart, she already knew what her answer would be. Adam's business card lay on the table, illuminated by the first rays of sun, like a promise of a new beginning. Helena reached for her phone. 3 weeks had passed since Helena agreed to perform at Adam's charity gala. 3 weeks of intense preparation that had completely transformed her daily life. She still worked as a cleaner in the Novatech skyscraper. But after work, instead of returning to her small apartment, she drove to an elegant vocal studio in downtown Manhattan. Professor Theodore Wisniewski, a retired opera singer and one of the most respected vocal coaches in the country, had been hired by Adam to prepare Helena for the performance. "Breath! Control your breath, Helena," the older man admonished her, tapping his cane on the floor to the rhythm of the music. "Diaphragm working, ribs expanding, and you hold that note." Helena stood in the middle of the room, her back straight as a board, performing breathing exercises. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her abdominal muscles trembled from the effort. She had never imagined singing could be so physically exhausting. "Once more, from the beginning," Professor Wisniewski said, sitting at the grand piano and playing the introduction to the aria O mio babbino caro from Puccini's Gianni Schicchi. Helena took a deep breath and began to sing. Her voice, already beautiful and strong, gained new dimensions under the guidance of a professional. Greater control, better projection, richer emotional nuances. "Better, much better," the professor declared after the piece concluded, "but still not perfect. Work on that transition in the middle section, and remember, you're not singing for yourself, you're singing for the last row in the balcony. Every word, every note must reach them." Helena nodded, grateful for his strict but fair assessment. Professor Wisniewski was demanding but effective. In those 3 weeks, they had accomplished more than Helena believed possible. After the 2-hour lesson, exhausted but satisfied, Helena stepped out of the studio into the cool April evening. A black Mercedes waited for her outside. "Good evening, Helena," greeted Carl, Adam's driver, who had been picking her up after every lesson for 2 weeks and driving her home. "How did it go today?" Better," she replied with a smile, getting into the car. "The professor says I'm making progress." "That's wonderful," Carl smiled at her in the rearview mirror. "Mr. Nowak will be pleased." Adam. Helena felt her heart quicken at the very thought of him. Since their coffee date at the cadenza, they had seen each other regularly, though not as often as she would have liked. Adam was a busy man, running a large company, traveling, meeting with investors and business partners. But he always found time to call her in the evening and ask how her day had been, how lessons were going, if she needed anything. Sometimes he accompanied her to lessons, sitting quietly in a corner of the studio and observing her progress. On such days, Helena felt both more nervous and more motivated. She wanted to impress him, to show him that his faith in her was not misplaced. After lessons, he usually took her to dinner at some intimate restaurant where they talked about music, books, movies, about everything but work. Adam seemed to deliberately avoid topics related to the differences in their social and financial status. He treated her as an equal, as someone he respected and admired. And Helena increasingly realized that her feelings for Adam went beyond gratitude and admiration. The way her heart quickened when she saw him, how her hands trembled slightly when he accidentally touched her arm, how she lost her train of thought when he looked her straight in the eyes. All of it told her she was falling into something she should avoid, because how could it end well? He, rich, influential, admired. She, a poor immigrant from a small town, cleaning his office. It was a recipe for disaster, the plot of an opera that always ends in tragedy. "We're here, Helena." Carl's voice pulled her from her reverie. The Mercedes stopped in front of her apartment building. The old, peeling facade of the building contrasted sharply with the luxury car, reminding Helena of the two worlds she was navigating. "Thank you, Carl. Good night," she said, getting out. "Good night, Helena. See you tomorrow." Helena entered her apartment where Mozart greeted her, demanding immediate attention. She fed the cat, then took a quick shower, washing away the sweat and fatigue from the intense lesson. When she emerged from the bathroom, her phone rang. Her heart beat faster when she saw Adam's name on the display. "Hello?" she answered, trying to make her voice sound normal. "Helena, good evening." Adam's voice was warm, but she could hear the weariness in it. "How was the lesson?" "Pretty good," she replied, sitting on the bed. "The professor says I'm making progress." "That's wonderful." The enthusiasm in his voice sounded genuine. "I have no doubt you'll be the star of the evening." Helena smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "And how was your day?" she asked. Adam sighed. "Long, exhausting, meetings from morning until night, and now I still have to review a stack of documents before tomorrow's video conference with Tokyo." "You should rest," Helena said with concern in her voice. "You can't possibly work all night." I've been trying to tell you that for 3 weeks," Adam chuckled. "But you're right. That's actually why I'm calling. I was wondering if you'd like to—" He hesitated for a moment. "If you'd like to go with me to the Metropolitan Museum of Art tomorrow. They're opening a new exhibition of American modernist painting, and I have an invitation to the preview. We could go together and then grab some lunch." Helena hesitated. It sounded like a date, a real date in a public place where people could see them together. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she replied cautiously. "People might—" "Might what?" Adam asked when she trailed off. "See us together." "So what?" "You know," Helena sighed, "you're well known. People would talk." "Oh, let them talk," Adam retorted firmly. "What do I care what others think? I know what I think and feel, and that's enough for me." Helena felt her heart quicken. What was he talking about? What did he feel? "Adam," she began, but didn't know how to continue. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment of silence. "I don't want to pressure you. If you're not comfortable, we can figure out something else. We could watch a movie at my place or—" No, Helena interrupted him. "The exhibition sounds great. I'd love to go." "Really?" The joy in his voice was almost palpable. "Really?" she confirmed, smiling to herself. "I haven't been to a museum in ages." "Wonderful." Adam sounded like he'd just won the lottery. "I'll pick you up at 11 in the morning, all right?" "All right," Helena agreed. "See you tomorrow." "See you tomorrow, Helena. Sleep well." When she hung up, Helena lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Mozart jumped up beside her, demanding affection. She stroked the cat mechanically, her thoughts revolving around tomorrow, around Adam, around what was happening between them. Because something was happening, she was sure of it, something she couldn't name, which simultaneously terrified and excited her. Something that could be the beginning of something wonderful, or the worst mistake of her life. "What am I getting myself into?" she thought, closing her eyes. But despite her fears, she couldn't suppress the smile that formed on her lips. Tomorrow. She would see him tomorrow. The Metropolitan Museum of Art gleamed in the spring sun as Helena and Adam ascended the wide steps leading to the main entrance. Helena felt the gazes of other visitors upon them. Were they looking at her, at him, or at them together, wondering what a man like Adam Nowak was doing with a woman like her? She had dressed her best, in a navy dress she had bought specifically for the occasion, and flat shoes that didn't fit perfectly, but were the only elegant pair she owned. Her hair was styled in a careful bun, and her makeup was subtle, yet enhancing her natural beauty. Adam, as always, looked impeccable in his designer jeans, white shirt, and navy blazer. He also wore sunglasses, which he removed as they entered the building. "Ready?" he asked, offering her his arm. Helena hesitated for a second, then took it with a smile. Together they entered the museum, where Adam presented his invitation, and they were led to the hall where the preview was being held. The exhibition was dedicated to American modernist painting, canvases full of emotion, color, and expression. Helena, though not as knowledgeable about art as she was about music, was captivated. Adam proved to be a surprisingly good guide, explaining the historical and artistic context of individual works. "I didn't know you were interested in art," she said at one point, as they paused before a massive, abstract canvas. Adam smiled, looking at the painting. "My mother was a painter, an amateur but very talented. I grew up surrounded by canvases, paints, and the smell of turpentine. She was the one who took me to museums and taught me how to look at art." "And your father?" "The one who wanted you to pursue serious business." Adam's face clouded slightly. "My father was a pragmatist. He considered art a waste of time, just like music. He wanted me to be like him, effective, practical, profit-oriented." "And did you become like that?" Helena asked softly. Adam looked at her, and in his eyes she saw sadness. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I try not to forget what's truly important, about music, about art, about—" He hesitated. "About the people who make life meaningful." Their gazes met, and for a moment Helena felt as if the world around them had ceased to exist. It was just them, standing before a painting depicting an explosion of colors, looking at each other as if for the first time. The moment was interrupted by a voice from the side. "Adam! Adam Nowak!" Adam turned, his face adopting a mask of polite interest. Standing before them was an elegant middle-aged man, with graying temples and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mark!" Adam nodded. "What a surprise." "For me too," the man replied. Then his gaze fell on Helena. "And this—" "Helena Kowalski," Adam introduced her. "My friend." Helena noticed the slight hesitation before the last word. Friend. Yes, that was probably the safest description of their relationship, though it didn't convey everything that was between them. "Mark Davis?" The man extended his hand. "Adam's friend and competitor, depending on the day of the week." Helena shook his hand, feeling a bit awkward. Mark looked at her judgmentally, as if trying to classify her, to place her in the appropriate mental compartment. "Nice to meet you," she said, trying to sound confident. "Likewise," Mark replied, then turned to Adam. "I didn't know you were interested in modernism." "There's a lot you don't know about me," Adam replied with a faint smile. "And you? What brings you here?" "My wife," Mark pointed to an elegant woman talking with the curator a few feet away. "Agatha is a big fan of Jackson Pollock. I couldn't refuse." For a few minutes the men discussed business, exchanging information that sounded like a foreign language to Helena. She felt increasingly out of place, as if she were an intruder in a world she didn't belong to. Finally, Mark glanced at his watch and declared he had to join his wife. Before leaving, he cast one more look at Helena and said to Adam, "An interesting choice, Adam. You always did like surprises." When he left, Helena felt a flush of shame spread across her face. What did he mean? That she was a surprising choice of companion for someone like Adam? That she didn't fit into his world? "Don't mind him," Adam said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. Mark's always been a jerk. Helena laughed despite herself, surprised by the vulgarity from the usually elegant Adam. He's your friend, she noted. And competitor, he reminded her with a smile. And besides, not all my friends are nice. Some are just useful. Something in his tone sent a chill down Helena's spine. This was a side of Adam she hadn't known yet, pragmatic, calculating, using acquaintances for his own ends. She recalled what he had said about his father and how he sometimes became like him. Was this it? Was she also useful to him? Some project, a whim, a way to showcase his generosity and magnanimity. Look, I pulled a poor cleaner from the social depths, gave her a chance. I'm such a wonderful person. Helena? Adam's voice pulled her from her gloomy thoughts. Are you all right? She looked at him, trying to discern something in his eyes that would confirm her fears, but she saw only genuine concern and something more, a warmth that made her heart beat faster. Yes, she replied, shaking off her doubts. Everything's fine. I was just thinking about something. Adam watched her for a moment, as if trying to guess her thoughts, then nodded. Let's go see the rest of the exhibition, he suggested, offering her his arm again. And then I'm taking you to the best lunch in New York. Only 2 weeks remained until the charity gala, and Helena felt the stress slowly beginning to overwhelm her. Preparations had entered their final, most intense phase. Professor Wisniewski had become even more demanding, and the performance program was finally set. Helena was to sing 3 arias, Puccini's O mio babbino caro, Habanera from Bizet's Carmen, and Handel's Lascia ch'io pianga. Each showcased a different aspect of her talent, from lyrical to dramatic, and each required perfect technique. Again, the professor exclaimed, striking his cane on the floor. You must feel this aria, Helena. Carmen is a seductress, a femme fatale. Your voice must be like velvet and steel at once. Helena took a deep breath and began to sing again. Her voice, now significantly stronger and more controlled than weeks before, filled the studio. Professor Wisniewski, despite his sternness, couldn't suppress a faint smile. He knew his student was making enormous progress. Adam often came to lessons, sitting quietly in a corner of the studio and observing. His presence, instead of distracting Helena, actually boosted her confidence. When she sang, she looked mostly at him, and his approving glances and smiles were her greatest reward. After the lesson, as Professor Wisniewski gathered his belongings, muttering that she might still become a good singer if she'd just relax, Adam approached Helena. You're incredible, he said, looking at her with admiration. You make progress every single day. Helena smiled, tired but pleased. The professor says I still have a lot to improve. The professor is a perfectionist, Adam shrugged, but even he sees how much you've developed. Can't you hear it? The truth was, Helena did hear the difference. Her voice had gained new dimensions, greater control, better projection. But she still felt she could be better, that she should be better, especially if she was to perform before an elite audience at the gala. I want it to be perfect, she said softly. Adam took her hand and squeezed it gently. It will be wonderful, he assured her. Trust me. Helena looked at their clasped hands. In recent weeks, their relationship had evolved, moving from a formal acquaintance to something that could be called friendship, or perhaps something more. Adam never crossed certain lines, never pushed, but in his glances, his gestures, the way he pronounced her name, there was something that told her his feelings extended beyond mere liking. And hers. Helena could no longer deny it. She had fallen in love with Adam Nowak. She had fallen in love with a millionaire, a company CEO, a man from another world. It was madness, it was impossible, it was doomed to fail. And yet, when he looked at her as he did now, with warmth and admiration, she felt that perhaps anything was possible. I have a surprise for you, Adam suddenly said, interrupting her thoughts. Actually, 2 surprises. Surprises? Helena raised an eyebrow. What kind? Adam smiled mysteriously. The first one is waiting for us outside. The second, You'll see in a moment. They left the studio and stepped onto the New York street, where a black Mercedes waited. Carl, Adam's driver, stood beside the car, holding a large, flat box. "Good evening, Helena." Carl greeted her with a smile. "Mr. Nowak asked me to pick this up for you." He handed her the box, and Helena took it with curiosity. "What is it?" she asked, looking at Adam. "Open it," he encouraged her. Helena carefully lifted the lid and pushed aside layers of tissue paper. Inside lay a gown, a beautiful, elegant creation in a deep navy hue, sprinkled with tiny crystals that glittered in the light of the street lamps. "Adam," she whispered, touching the delicate fabric. It's for the gala," he explained, watching her reaction. "I thought you should have something special for your big night." Helena stared at the gown, unsure what to say. It was, without a doubt, the most beautiful outfit she had ever seen, let alone owned. It must have cost a fortune. "I can't accept this," she finally said, looking up. "It's too expensive a gift." "Of course you can," Adam countered with a smile. "It's not a gift, it's an investment, part of your fee for the performance." "Fee?" Helena blinked, disoriented. "But I'm performing for charity. I don't expect any money." "And yet you'll get one," Adam was firm. "Every artist performing at the gala receives a fee. There are no exceptions, not even for friends." Friends. That word again, which simultaneously said so much and so little. "Besides," Adam added, opening the car door, "the gown is just the beginning. The second surprise awaits elsewhere." Helena got into the car, still holding the box with the gown. Adam sat beside her, and Carl took the driver's seat. "Where are we going?" Helena asked as the car started. "You'll see," Adam replied mysteriously. They drove through New York, passing familiar streets and buildings, until they finally turned into an avenue leading to one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. They stopped in front of an elegant modern building with glass balconies and a security guard at the entrance. "We're here," Adam announced as Carl opened their doors. Helena got out, looking around with curiosity. "What is this place?" "My home," Adam replied, "or rather one of them. I live here when I'm in New York." Helena felt her heart quicken. Adam's home. He had never invited her there before. Their meetings had always taken place in cafes, restaurants, or the vocal studio. She suddenly felt nervous, as if they were crossing some invisible boundary. The security guard nodded in greeting, and Adam led Helena to the elevator. They ascended to the penthouse floor, where there was only one apartment. "Welcome to my humble abode," Adam said, opening the door. Humble was the last word that would have occurred to Helena upon seeing his apartment. The spacious, modern penthouse with panoramic windows offered breathtaking views of New York City. The minimalist yet elegant decor, the artwork on the walls, the grand piano in the corner of the living room, everything screamed luxury and money. "It's beautiful," Helena said, suddenly feeling very out of place in her simple clothes. "I'm glad you like it," Adam smiled, taking off his blazer and hanging it over the back of a chair. "Make yourself at home. Would you like something to drink? Wine? Tea?" "Tea would be nice," Helena replied, still looking around the apartment. Adam nodded and walked to the kitchen, leaving her alone in the living room. Helena approached the window, admiring the illuminated city spread out beneath her. Somewhere out there, amidst those lights, was her small apartment in Queens, her old life, which seemed to grow more distant with each passing day. "The view is one of the reasons I bought this apartment," Adam said, returning with 2 mugs of tea. "I've always liked watching the city at night." He handed her one of the mugs, and their fingers brushed for a moment. Helena felt the familiar tingle that always accompanied their physical contact. "Thank you," she said, taking a sip of the hot beverage. "For the tea and for everything." Adam looked at her, and there was something in his eyes she couldn't quite read. "I mentioned I had a second surprise for you," he said, placing his mug on the table. He walked to the grand piano and opened the lid. On the music stand lay sheet music, a new piece Helena didn't recognize. "What is it?" she asked, approaching closer. "A new piece for your gala repertoire," Adam replied, sitting at the instrument. "I wrote it for you." Helena froze. "You wrote it for me?" Adam nodded, a faint blush appearing on his face. "It's not a masterpiece, but I wanted you to have something special, something no one else had sung." He began to play, his fingers dancing across the keys, drawing a beautiful, melancholic melody from the instrument. It was an aria, modern, but with classical influences, somewhat reminiscent of Puccini, but with Adam's personal stamp. Helena listened, captivated. The melody was beautiful, emotional, moving, perfect for her voice. And the lyrics. The lyrics were in English, a rarity for an opera aria, and told the story of a woman finding her strength and voice, overcoming adversity. "It's beautiful," she whispered when Adam finished playing. "Did you really write it yourself?" "The melody, yes," he admitted. "A poet friend helped me with the lyrics, but the inspiration—" He looked at her intensely. "The inspiration was real." Helena felt her eyes well up with tears. No one had ever done something so personal, so meaningful for her. "Thank you," she said softly, not trusting her voice. Adam rose from the grand piano and walked to her. They stood very close now, and his gaze was so intense that Helena felt as if she were drowning in his blue eyes. "Helena," Adam began, his voice low and serious, "I want you to know that all of this—" He gestured to the sheet music, the gown, the entire apartment. "It's not a whim or a fleeting project. What I'm doing because I believe in your talent, and because—" He paused, as if searching for the right words. Helena held her breath, her heart pounding frantically. "Because?" she prompted in a whisper. Adam looked her straight in the eyes. "Because I care about you, more than anyone in a very long time." Something in his gaze, in his voice, made Helena unable to deny what she felt any longer. Without thinking, she took a step forward and kissed him. It was a delicate, uncertain kiss, but Adam immediately responded, pulling her closer. His lips were soft and warm, and his arms, which enveloped her, gave her a sense of security she had never experienced before. When they finally pulled apart, both were slightly breathless. Adam rested his forehead against hers, still holding her close. "I care about you, Helena," he repeated, as if to leave her with no doubt. "And I want you to know that whatever happens, whatever you decide after the gala, whether you want to continue your musical career or return to your old life, I will support you, no matter what." Helena looked at him, feeling her heart fill with warmth. Her entire life, she had had to fend for herself, fighting for every small success, every little comfort. And now, before her stood a man who offered her not only a chance to fulfill her dreams, but also something she had never expected, unconditional support and love. "Adam," she began, but trailed off, unsure how to express what she felt. How could she tell him she was afraid, that despite all the happiness she felt, a part of her still wondered if it was all too good to be true? That she still felt the chasm between their worlds, between a cleaner and a billionaire. "You don't have to say anything," Adam said gently, as if reading her thoughts. "I know this is all happening fast. I know you have doubts, and that's okay. We have time." He kissed her gently on the forehead, then pulled back slightly, giving her space. "Now then," he smiled, changing the subject, "perhaps you'd try singing my aria. I'd like to hear how it sounds in your rendition." Helena was grateful for the change of subject. She needed time to process what had happened between them, to understand her feelings and his intentions. "With pleasure," she replied, walking to the grand piano. Adam sat at the instrument, and Helena stood beside him, looking at the sheet music. He began to play, and she began to sing, pouring her whole heart, her entire soul into the piece. She sang of a woman finding her strength, of love arriving unexpectedly, of dreams finally having a chance to come true. And with every note, every word, she felt her own story intertwine with the story of the song's heroine. When the last note faded, silence fell in the apartment. Adam looked at her with an expression of absolute rapture. "You are incredible," he finally said. "You have no idea how much." Helena smiled, feeling warmth spread through her body. For the first time in a very long time, she felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. The days leading up to the gala passed like a feverish dream. Singing lessons, rehearsals, dress fittings, all of it consumed Helena's every spare moment. And on top of that, she still had her regular duties at Novatech, where she continued to work as a cleaner. Adam insisted she take time off, or even quit her job entirely, offering to cover all her expenses. But Helena was too proud to agree. Work gave her a sense of independence, reminded her who she was and where she came from. Even if her life was turning into a fairy tale, she still wanted to keep her feet firmly on the ground. But the fairy tale also had its shadows. Her colleagues on the cleaning crew began to notice changes in her behavior. Frequent absences, mysterious phone calls, a general distraction. Rumors circulated, and Helena felt curious glances and heard whispers behind her back. "Is it true you're seeing the CEO?" Eva, a co-worker, asked her one day as they cleaned the restrooms on the 20th floor. Helena froze for a moment, wondering how to answer. "Where did you get that idea?" she asked, trying to sound nonchalant. "People are talking," Eva shrugged. "They've seen you getting into his car, and apparently you're often called to his office." Helena sighed. There was no point in denying it. Rumors would circulate regardless of what she said. "It's complicated," she finally replied. "But yes, we're seeing each other, in a way." Eva looked at her for a moment with wide eyes, then shook her head in disbelief. "The boss will be furious when she finds out. You know we're not allowed to have relationships with clients." "I know," Helena conceded, "but it's really not that simple." Eva watched her for a moment, then her face softened. "Be careful, Helena," she said softly. "People like him. They live in a different world. For them, this might just be a game." Helena wanted to protest, to say that Adam wasn't like that he really cared about her. But could she be absolutely sure? After only a few weeks of knowing him, could she claim to truly know him? These doubts accompanied her throughout the day, even during her evening singing lesson. Professor Wisniewski had to call her to attention several times when her thoughts wandered far from the music. "Focus, Ms. Kowalski!" he finally exclaimed, striking his cane on the floor. "In 1 week, you'll be performing before New York's elite. You cannot afford to be distracted." "I'm sorry, Professor," Helena said, chastened. "It won't happen again." After the lesson, as she waited for Adam's car, he was out of town at a meeting that day, Professor Wisniewski approached her with an uncharacteristically gentle expression. "Something is bothering you, child," he stated, and it wasn't a question. Helena hesitated, then nodded. "I'm scared," she admitted softly. "Not of the performance, but of everything that's happening. It's like a dream from which I could wake up at any moment." The day of the gala arrived sooner than Helena expected. She now sat in a dressing room at David Geffen Hall, surrounded by professional stylists who were preparing her for the most important performance of her life. The makeup artist was finishing her work, and the hairdresser was pinning her hair into an elegant bun with loose strands falling on her neck. "You look beautiful," the stylist said, adjusting the final details. "Mr. Nowak will be thrilled." Helena smiled weakly. Her stomach churned with nerves. Despite months of preparation, despite the support of Adam and Professor Wisniewski, she felt unprepared. In a few hours, she was to stand before hundreds of people, wealthy, influential, accustomed to top-tier performances. What if she disappointed them? What if she disappointed Adam? A knock sounded at the door, and a moment later, Professor Wisniewski entered the dressing room, elegant in a black tuxedo. "How are you feeling?" he asked, observing her critically. "Nervous," Helena admitted honestly. The professor nodded. "That's good. Stage fright is a sign that you care. Use that tension, transform it into energy on stage." Oh, he moved closer and placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture he had never allowed himself before. "Remember what I told you. Breathe. Support the sound with your diaphragm. And sing with your heart, not just your voice." Helena nodded, touched by his support. "Thank you, Professor, for everything." In his eyes, she saw something she had never seen before: pride. "No, thank you," he said softly, "for reminding me why I love music." He left, leaving Helena with a lump of emotions in her throat. She didn't have time to process them as the dressing room door opened again and Adam entered. He looked dazzling in a black tuxedo, his hair slicked back and a faint smile on his face. At the sight of him, Helena's heart beat faster, as it always did. "Could you give us a moment?" he asked the stylists, who immediately left, closing the door behind them. Adam walked to Helena and took her hands in his. "You look phenomenal," he said, gazing at her with admiration. Helena wore the gown he had given her, a navy creation that now, after a few alterations, perfectly hugged her figure. The tiny crystals shimmered in the light, adding sparkle to the dress. "Thank you," she replied. "You don't look so bad yourself." Adam smiled, then grew serious. "Are you nervous?" "Very," Helena admitted. "I'm afraid I'll let you down." Adam shook his head and cupped her face in his hands. "That's impossible. Whatever happens, I'm proud of you, and I'll be with you no matter what." He kissed her gently, and Helena felt some of her tension ebb away. In his arms, she always felt safe, as if nothing bad could happen to her. "I have something for you," Adam said, reaching into his tuxedo jacket pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Helena held her breath as he opened it. Inside lay a delicate necklace with a sapphire pendant shaped like a musical note. "It's a good luck charm," Adam explained, fastening the necklace around her neck. "To remind you that music has always been a part of your life, even when you had to hide it." Helena touched the pendant, feeling tears welling in her eyes. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." "Don't cry, you'll ruin your makeup," Adam joked, wiping away a solitary tear that traced a path down her cheek with his thumb. A knock sounded at the door, and Megan, Adam's assistant, peeked into the dressing room. "Excuse me for interrupting, but guests are starting to arrive," she informed them. "You should be at the entrance to greet them." Adam nodded. "I'm coming." When Megan left, Adam kissed Helena once more, this time longer, deeper. "I'll be in the front row watching every second of your triumph," he said, pulling back. "Show them all who you really are, Helena Kowalski." With those words he left, leaving her with a mixture of fear and excitement. The stylists returned to finish preparations, and Helena closed her eyes, trying to focus on the task ahead. "Show them all who you really are," she repeated Adam's words in her mind. But who was she? A cleaner pretending to be an opera singer? A girl from upstate trying to fit into a world of luxury? The lover of a millionaire who could tire of her at any moment? Or perhaps simply Helena Kowalski, a woman who, despite life's adversities, had never stopped dreaming. The concert hall of David Geffen Hall at Lincoln Center filled to capacity. Elegantly dressed guests, business people, politicians, celebrities, artists, took their seats, speaking in hushed tones. Adam stood on stage at the microphone, welcoming everyone to his foundation's charity gala. "Thank you for being with us on this special evening," he said with a smile. "Your presence and generosity will help us raise funds for scholarships for talented children from underprivileged families. We believe that talent should not be wasted due to lack of resources." His gaze swept across the hall, pausing for a moment on Mark Davis, who sat in the third row with his wife. The man smiled mockingly, as if he knew something others didn't. "And now," Adam continued, "I have the honor of presenting a truly exceptional artist to you. Her story is living proof that talent can flourish in the most unexpected places, if only given a chance." Backstage, Helena listened to Adam's speech, feeling her heart beat faster and faster. In a moment, she would walk onto the stage. In a moment, her entire life was about to change. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adam's voice boomed ceremoniously, "I proudly present Helena Kowalski." Applause filled the hall as Helena walked onto the stage. The spotlights blinded her for a moment, but she quickly adjusted. She approached the microphone, smiling uncertainly at the audience, whose faces were blurred in the dimness of the hall. The orchestra began to play the introduction to her first aria, O mio babino caro. Helena took a deep breath, focusing on the music, on her technique, on everything Professor Wisniewski had taught her. And then she began to sing. Her voice, pure and strong, filled the hall. With each note she felt her confidence grow. This was her moment, her chance to show the world who she truly was. When she finished the first aria, the hall erupted in applause. Helena smiled, feeling the stress give way to euphoria. She found Adam with her eyes, sitting in the front row. He looked at her with such admiration and pride that she felt her heart fill with warmth. The subsequent arias went even better. Habanera, from Carmen, showcased her sensual, passionate side, and Handel's Lascia Ch'io Pianga revealed the emotional depth of her interpretation. With each piece, the audience reacted with increasing enthusiasm. Finally, it was time for the last piece, the aria Adam had written specifically for her. Helena looked at him as the conductor announced the world premiere of a new composition by Adam Nowak. Adam smiled at her, and in his eyes, she saw something that gave her courage. The aria was beautiful, modern but with classical influences, telling the story of a woman who finds her voice and strength. Helena sang it with all her heart, pouring her entire soul into every word, every note. When the last note faded, silence fell in the hall, and then, like a wave, the applause came. Loud, enthusiastic, unending. The audience rose, rewarding her with a standing ovation. Helena stood on stage, overwhelmed by the reaction. Tears of happiness streamed down her cheeks as she bowed again and again. Adam joined her on stage, presenting her with a bouquet of red roses. He put his arm around her, and she rested her head on his shoulder, no longer caring what others might think. It was her triumph, her moment of glory, her new beginning. "Thank you," she whispered to Adam as he led her backstage, away from the cheering crowd. "Thank you for believing in me." Adam looked at her with a love he no longer tried to conceal. "This is just the beginning, Helena," he said, kissing her gently. "Your voice should be heard by the whole world." And in that moment, enveloped in the warmth of his arms and the echo of applause still reverberating from the hall, Helena believed that anything was possible, that fairy tales sometimes come true, that a woman who cleaned offices, singing opera in Latin when she thought no one was listening, could become a star, and that a millionaire who had paused in the corridor, captivated by her voice, could truly love her. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and unanswered questions, but whatever was to come, Helena knew one thing: she would never again be afraid to dream. 3 months had passed since the memorable gala at David Geffen Hall. Helena's life had changed beyond recognition. Following the dazzling success of her performance, which was covered in major newspapers and cultural magazines, offers poured in: concerts, auditions, interviews. That morning, Helena sat in the Cadenza Cafe, where it all began, reviewing an article about herself in a prestigious music magazine. Sensation of the season, opera revelation, Cinderella of the New York music scene. The headlines were exaggerated but pleasant to read. "I see fame hasn't spoiled you," she heard a familiar voice. Adam sat opposite her, placing 2 cups of coffee on the table. He looked tired but happy. He had just returned from a week-long business trip to Singapore. "I missed you," Helena said, taking his hand. "I missed you more," he replied with a smile. "What's new with you?" Helena sighed, putting down the magazine. "The Metropolitan Opera wants me to sing Musetta in La Bohème next season. And the New York City Opera is offering a contract for 3 performances as Carmen." "That's wonderful!" Adam squeezed her hand. "I told you, you have a great future ahead of you." Helena smiled, but a shadow of uncertainty lurked in her eyes. "What about us?" she asked softly. "All these offers, concert tours. I'll be constantly on the road." Adam looked at her for a moment. then pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. "I've been thinking about that," he said, opening it to reveal a beautiful sapphire ring. "And I've come to the conclusion that I don't want us to be apart. I want to be with you wherever your talent takes you." Helena stared at the ring, then at Adam, feeling her heart rise to her throat. "Are you—" "Yes," he confirmed with a smile. "Helena Kowalski, will you marry me?" Silence fell in the cafe as all the guests turned their attention to their table. Helena felt their gazes, but all she saw were Adam's blue eyes, full of love and hope. "Yes," she replied, her voice soft but steady. "I will marry you." Adam slipped the ring onto her finger, and the cafe erupted in spontaneous applause. He leaned across the table and kissed her, and Helena felt that finally all the pieces of her life were fitting together into a cohesive whole. Music, love, a future she had always dreamed of, but feared to believe in. "Actually," Adam said as they pulled apart, "I have another surprise for you. Professor Wisniewski spoke with the director of the Juilliard School. They're ready to accept you into a special program for exceptionally talented adults. You can finally get the formal education you always dreamed of." Helena felt tears welling in her eyes. It was like the fulfillment of her last, most secret dream. "Thank you," she whispered, squeezing his hand, "for everything, for stopping in the corridor that day." Adam smiled, looking at her with love. "It was the best decision I ever made." They sat there, holding hands, planning their future together. Marriage, concerts, studies, maybe children someday. The road ahead wasn't easy, but they were ready to walk it together. And as they walked out of the cafe, hand in hand, Helena began to hum under her breath the Latin aria she had sung that evening in Adam's office. The aria that had changed her life forever. Because sometimes the most beautiful stories begin in the least expected moments, like when a cleaner sang opera in Latin, thinking she was alone, and a millionaire paused in the corridor, captivated by her voice.